So there's been a lot of change occurring in my life lately. With all that new change comes new routines, a new lifestyle, a new way that I'm showing up for myself and to the people around me. Really just a lot of new stuff. You might be experiencing something similar, and you can really relate when I say some of the habits that you've been harboring are just no longer compatible with who you are today. Or that you're at a time where your old habits are shedding, new ones are forming, but you also feel lost in knowing how to navigate them and having them stick.
So,
welcome to the party. Honestly, welcome. I've been here for a while now. Might be thinking, okay, yes, I do have all these new habits that I want to try out, that I want to implement, but how do I get them to stick? And why is it that I'm resisting them so hard even though I truly want them in my life? These are just some questions you have asked yourself. I have definitely asked myself
many times,
especially when I started noticing my life transforming and my inner self just feeling like it was struggling to keep up. At the beginning, I tried so many different ways to get my habits to stick, but everything kept falling down the wayside until I really dug down and focused in, and I found what I needed to help my habits last. So I want to share with you guys 4 essential tips that allowed me to open up to new habits, get them to stick, really find a new purpose in my habits. Okay, let's get into the tips. The first tip that I want to start off with is to have a purpose for your habit that is bigger than yourself. For example, in my life, I am entering in this new chapter where I stay in more often, I want to go to bed earlier, and really I just want to conserve my energy for the very early hours of the next day. Lo and behold, I'm basically just experiencing a transition where I'm going from my night owl life to my morning person phase.
Is it that sweet? I guess so. I'm working late, 'cause I must.
And yes, this is partly because I have been inspired by all the girlies showing off their morning routines and how cute they are. But really, I've been wanting to become a morning person for the longest time. I love the idea of just having a moment to yourself before you give all your time and your energy to everyone else. This new habit that I want to form came to mind when I started my 9 to 5. My mornings would get stuffed with meetings and agendas that were circulating around everyone else's agenda. If I had told myself that I want to be a morning person because I just want to be another cute aesthetic girly who has that ideal Pinterest morning, I would have
crashed and burned.
Because purpose becomes all about external validation. And when the purpose is all about receiving external validation rather than internal, that suddenly becomes so out of your control. And when that disappears or there's just not enough, there's really no gas left to keep you going, especially during the hard times, because there will be hard times. So rather than make your purpose about getting others to like you more, make your habits more purposeful. Make them with true intention that are going to have you feel like you're aligning more to your own values and who you want to become. And just to stay on the habit of wanting to wake up earlier, the purpose can end up being to expand your knowledge beyond just work. So you'd like to spend your morning reading a new book, to desire more stillness and quiet so that you can bring calmness and peace to the day, or to find enjoyment in your alone times and to know that you'll be okay. So remind yourself that when you're about to start a new habit, or if you have a habit that it just isn't sticking, think through what the intention is and try to adjust it so that its purpose is bigger than yourself. Okay, tip number 2 is to quit pigeonholing yourself. What this means is to manage the narrative of how you talk to yourself. When you do this, your life will literally unfold. I can blatantly recall times where I spoke negatively to myself, and it led me to become more of those negative aspects that I was just trying so hard to avoid. For example, I reached a point in my life where I was starting to let go of friendships that just no longer served me. I want to say too, we change constantly. People change too. So there is no harm in outgrowing friendships. This is very healthy to do. What is also healthy is reminding yourself that you need to actually put in the work when you now have all this space to make new friends. I forgot that I needed to put in the work. And so I was left with all this space that had no friends. It led me to believe that I was lonely, that I actually had no friends to begin with, and that
no one
would want to now become friends with someone who had friends and now wants to make more friends, but they're in their late 20s. Why do they not still have friends yet? They should have figured it out already. I was definitely catastrophizing in this stage of my life. Back to my point, I was feeding myself a narrative that made me believe I was only worthy of loneliness. All that negative talk ended up altering the way that I acted because it led me to decline so many hangouts and so many invitations with friends that I truly wanted to see. I ended up self-sabotaging myself by making my schedule way too busy so that when people would ask to hang out, I just had excuses and I acted closed off all the time. I eventually ended up becoming the narrative I was telling myself, alone and without friends. And then I heard this on a podcast. Your brain can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. I don't know if that's absolutely true or not, but it definitely helped me realize that even though I began living the reality I was fearing most, I can trick myself out of this funk the same way I tricked my way into it. And I was successfully able to do just that by telling myself I am open to receiving new friendships, that I enjoy putting myself out there, and that I am someone people would like to be friends with. Ultimately, I changed the narrative that I was telling myself, and that really just helped me get back on track with my habit of forming more meaningful connections and friendships. So if you've been really hard on yourself lately for not sticking to your habits or feeling like you're stuck in your old ways, try changing the way that you're talking to yourself and make it a lot more positive and light. When you do so, you're going to see a really big shift. Tip number 3 is to limit the amount of grieving you have towards your past self. This is something that I truly struggled with for a very long time. I think it's something that we're all guilty of, but we just don't notice that we're even doing it. I want to say this is similar to managing the narrative of our negative self-talk, but it's quite different because when we grieve our former self, we're living in the past. I think that a lot of us can unknowingly get into this cycle of self-grieving our former selves when we're saying things like, I'm no longer who I used to be. I handled things a lot easier back then. Or like me, just really grilling myself. I was a lot happier in that stage of my life. These are just some examples of how we grieve about a former version of who we once were. It limits us from actually praising this new version of ourselves and the new habits that make up this new version of us. It's also normal, and honestly, everyone does it, but it's not normal to hold on to who we once were. So remind yourself to always celebrate your new you and all the new habits that come with being this new version of you. I was listening to this other podcast called The Way Out Is In, and a guest on the episode said something that was just so profound. It freed me from living in my past and grieving about my former self. He said, freedom is something that we can touch in the present moment, even if we're sitting in prison. We can be in pain, but we can also be freed from it by experiencing it, accepting it, and working through it. I think that statement really stuck to me because I noticed that I would always flee to the past whenever a habit I was doing in the present moment was becoming too challenging or too uncomfortable. But hearing this quote and reciting it back to myself really helped me understand that this discomfort that I'm experiencing in this moment, there's freedom within it. There's freedom in the pain, and there's really freedom in every type of emotion and in every moment that I'm experiencing. Not just in the past where I think all the good times were. There's freedom and enjoyment in doing this new habit that I just can't get to stick right now. So I would encourage you all to speak this quote back to yourself, especially when you feel like you've hit a roadblock or feel like you're not measuring up to the habits that you've set out for yourself. Doing so will hopefully help you stay more present rather than run away to the distant memories of the past. Because when you're living in the past, you're not truly free, nor can we give the time and energy necessary for new habits to form. On to our last tip. Tip number 4, to resist that overthinking. I'm still working on this, and when I notice myself overthinking and when I stop myself from going down into a spiral of thoughts, I begin to realize that there is nothing to actually fear at all. And that doing the action of stopping what I'm thinking in the moment and just doing the habit itself has truly made all the difference. When I say to resist overthinking, I am totally not saying that it's not okay to weigh your options. What I'm trying to say is that overthinking too much, going into a spiral, can lead to unnecessary doubt, anxiousness, self-sabotage, and ultimately inaction. If you want to start the habit of exercising, but you're wound up in the thoughts of, what time do I go to the gym? Where are all the weights at the gym? What's the class schedule? Where am I going to park? You are not going to go to the gym. The list can just go on and on. Instead, when you notice yourself just thinking, questioning, and trying to find answers, before even doing step 1, stop yourself, quiet those thoughts, pick up your water bottle, put on your sneakers, and just head to the gym. Quite literally, go on autopilot, because the best way to start a habit is just by doing. And if you get stuck, you're allowed to think of alternative ways to keep going. Give yourself a few minutes just to sit with all these other alternatives. Don't let them sit in your mind and take up space in your mind for the entirety of the day. Just give yourself a few minutes, and once those minutes are up, take action. And it's okay if you end up going down the alternative way that ends up not working at all. Just try again. And by doing so, we start to get comfortable with learning as we go. So those are all the 4 tips that I want to share with you guys today on how to form new habits and how to get them to stick. I've been implementing these for quite a while now. They've really helped me push me through whenever I'm in a rut. Really just get through that threshold of where I wasn't seeing much change. I do hope that at least one of these tips have helped. If there is any habit that you are currently trying or you want to try out and it just really stuck to you, comment down below. I'd love to hear how you're using these to just build up your new life and experience this new exciting change of habits. Also, if you found these tips to be helpful, please go ahead and like the video. Also subscribe if you want to see more of these self-development videos.